unelected, we have to have one tribe and we have to have 2 counties and 2 cities represented. Because of the diverse nature of our membership, yeah, we need to make sure everyone is represented well. With that said, I will go ahead and call to order the August 19th Peninsula RTPO meeting. And we will start with a welcome and our introducwant. And I thank everyone for being here this morning. And I'll do the introductions, and then I want to talk about our meeting format just a little bit. See, and now we've got 2 tribes. And who has been?
Port Townsend.
Port Townsend, thank you. Okay, we'll start with our introductions. And I do the introductions, most all of us on the call know each other. However, we do have a viewing public who we need to be introduced to. And I do it looking at my particular screen. It may or may not be in line with your screen. So if you will just acknowledge yourself when I call your name. The first person I see is Dick Taylor, who is a commissioner with the Port of Shelton. I am Beck Ashby. I chair the Peninsula RPTO, and I represent the city of Port Orchard. Ed Coviello is RTPO staff, and you can see that he is in our official public meeting room this morning. And we have Thera Black, the RPTO coordinator, and Colette Kostelik is new with the Jefferson County Public Works. Monty Reinders is here representing Jefferson County. Miranda Nash is with Jefferson Transit and is our fiscal agent. Steve Gray is with Clallam County's Public Works Department. Nicole, how do you pronounce your last name, Nicole? Gauthier is with Jefferson Transit. And Leslie Snyder is a council person with the city of Bainbridge Island. Leslie Schwarum Warren is a council person with Port Angeles and the RPTO secretary. Michael Bateman is with the city of Paulsbo's Public Works Department. Megan Euchre is with the city of Sequim. I believe you're also with the Public Works Department. Is that correct? Okay. And Justine Marmish, thank you, is with our LSC consultant group. Andy Nelson is with Kitsap County Public Works. He's here. David Fort is on vacation, so Andy is here representing Kitsap County today. We have Kate Dean also with us from Jefferson County. Susan Matthews, I believe, is, I'm looking quickly, Susan.
Lower Elwha Clallam.
Lower Elwha Clallam, yes. And I had just acknowledged her because it was another tribal member for us. And Amy Asher is with Mason Transit. Randy Netherland is a Mason County commissioner and our vice chair. Tracy Parker is with the Squaxin tribe. A.T. Stoddard is with our consulting group. Thank you. Brendan Meyer is representing Clallam Transit. Rachel Anderson is representing this city of Sequim. And George Mazer is Dennis. We just have to think of George, think of Dennis. He is our Washington State Department of Transportation Olympic Region Planner. And then Ben Thomas is with the city of Port Townsend. That is all the people I see on the screen, and I thank you very much for your attendance today. What I wanted to say about our meeting format is we are having success, and we're having apparently informative meetings, and we're getting quite a good participation. In order for us to manage and facilitate our meetings more efficiently, starting in October, we're going to move to the Zoom's webinar platform, which means that you will all get your unique login to our meetings. And with that, there will be a general public login, but you will all have your individual logins. The individual logins will go out to all of our executive board representatives, principals, and alternates, and I believe our TAC members, and then any of the supporting people that we have. It is just, again, we're doing this so that we can manage our meetings, facilitate our meetings a little more efficiently. So with that, we will move on down to the approval of our agenda. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Dick. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded to approve our agenda. Is there anyone who would be voting against the motion? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be voting against the motion? Hearing none, the agenda is approved with unanimous consent. There are 4 items today on our consent calendar. The minutes from our June meeting, our 4th quarter invoice, our Title VI report, and the critical rural freight corridor designation. These are all items that need action. We are happy to move any of them off the consent agenda. However, what I want to say is our last meeting, was a packed agenda, and it felt rushed during that meeting to get through all of the items and still have meaningful discussion. So with that said, I asked Sarah to move the Title VI and the rural freight designations to the consent agenda. I do that only with your approval. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Dick.
Second, Lindsay.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is there any discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved with unanimous consent. Moving down to our first action item is our draft human services transportation plan. And our goal today is to review this plan and approve it for public review and comment. Sarah, I will turn the discussion over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so for almost a year now, this has been on your agenda at different points along the way, from very first scoping it, and throughout you all have provided guidance and input, and I thank you, because we would not be coming to you today with a draft plan without your help along the way. And hopefully what you received and what you'll be discussing today, you find worthy of your time that you've put into this. I also want to give a shout out. What you're going to look at is a draft plan. All those different pieces have come together into a draft plan that, all the pieces that you provided input on. Your work got us here, but also I want to give a shout out to the providers, the service providers who gave us input all along the way, the transit agencies, the tribal transit agencies, the social service providers, and nonprofits who were vital in providing insights as to the needs of their clientele, the populations that they serve, and then also have played a really important role in helping us get word out to this community, to these affected populations. We sort of rely on the trusted messenger approach, and the people that we want to hear from know the providers better than they know us. And so we really want to thank the providers who've gotten us here as well. What we're doing today is presenting you with the draft plan that we think we think at the staff level and with the consultant team is ready to go out for public review and comment. What we need to hear from you today is whether you agree with that. And so you will be getting a brief overview of the plan and the engagement process going forward. We're excited to preview a new online sort of interactive story map format for this plan that is a first for us. And so I'm excited to hear what you think about that. And then after the briefing from AT and Justine, we tried to save time for your discussion to get the direction from you that we need to make this plan right for sending out for public review. It will come back to you in October with all the comments that we've received and any recommendations for refinement. And we will be asking for your approval then, and it will be used almost immediately to evaluate consolidated grants application. So that's the connection here between this plan. It relates back to funding opportunities for the kinds of projects that help to meet the special mobility needs of our most vulnerable residents. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to AT and Justine. A big shout out to them. AT and Justine came in less than ideal circumstances and have worked really hard in a very compressed time frame to develop some products for us that we're pleased to present to you today. Thank you to both of you and to Monica for getting us to this point, you guys. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Madam Chair and members of the board and others, glad to be able to present to you the draft plan. And we've got just a couple of slides to get started with. And so Justine's going to be sharing that. And if we can go to the next slide, Justine, kind of just an overview of what we'll be doing here. We give really just an update where we are. And as Sarah mentioned, we have the plan in what is called a story map format. And so we're going to spend our time presenting the plan using that format rather than focusing on slides of things out of the draft document. You've received the draft document, so you've had a chance to look at that. But we will walk you through how that has been incorporated into the story map format. And we will include the presentation of the strategies, again, which you saw at our last meeting. We had a discussion of those. They've been refined somewhat to put into the draft plan, and then from there to the public participation plan. So we can go to the next slide, Justine. And again, just as an overview, we're not going to dig into detail on the slide, but the plan does cover the demographic information. You'll see how that has been incorporated in the story map, and then the inventory of services, information from providers, for community input, and then addressing really regional strategies. And then slide will be looking at introducing the story map. And so let me introduce to you Justine. You heard me at your last meeting, but Justine has been doing a lot of the work on the story map. And so I'm going to just turn things over to her to walk you through that. Justine?
Great, nice to meet you all. Yeah, as it's been mentioned, a story map, it has a very interesting name. What's a story map? It is a way of more graphically showing information and data. We'll visit it in a moment. We were able to include a lot of demographic data, as well as an inventory of current services, and then our recommended strategies. So it's just kind of an online platform for all of this information to live in a way that's searchable and just a little more engaging, especially from the public perspective than just your average PDF or hard copy plan, which is great for some of us nerds, but maybe not as exciting for others. So let's go check it out. Might pop up in a different screen. Hold on. Can everyone see this?
At August, if at some point we get the results of these elections and we're all sitting around talking about it and Republicans significantly then
Justine, no, it's not showing up on the
Is the
shared
story
screen
map
there.
showing up or no?
No.
Okay, hold on a
There
second.
was audio, but the screen didn't change.
Yeah, someone else was speaking, but I didn't really know what was going on there. Okay, got it. So I had to reselect the new screen here. So here we are, a story map. It's
There you go.
yeah, does everyone see it? Great. Here we are. It's kind of a home page. There are two different ways. Sorry if I'm looking away, it's because I have two monitors. So I'm looking at my monitor, but this is my camera. When you scroll down, there are a couple different ways to navigate this site. You may either skip to whichever section you would like to see, or it is a continuous scroll. So I think most people will probably do a scroll through. We start with introduction, very similar to the plan, a lot of similar information, a little more condensed for easier reading through. We've added a lot of photography. Thank you for those who provided some photography. It definitely helps bring things to life a little bit more. And then we get into more of the information. And as you're going to see, a lot of these images are maps that are navigable by clicking and zooming in and out. Obviously, you are all very familiar with your region, but what you might not be more familiar with is some of this more demographic data that we've been able to show in a more visual way. You can actually zoom in pretty close and find your neighborhood. You can click on your census tract and see population density per square mile. And it does show as a larger number because most of these census tracts or block groups are quite small. So that is kind of what's unique to story mapping is instead of looking at a table or a static graphic, especially since your region is so large with so many different areas, it's a lot more possible to zoom in on very particular sections and really understand what's going on here. So we have our population density, continue to scroll through. I'm assuming this link has been provided or will be provided in the future for everyone to explore on their own. Sarah?
Yes, it is. And in fact, there's a whole web page set up for it now on the PRTPO website, and there's a link to that in the agenda packet.
Yeah, so I think, you
On the
know,
one page, you can find this and the PDF document at the same place.
great. Yeah, and so when you're reviewing the plan and you're giving us your feedback and input, please take some time to visit the story map, click around, explore. This is very editable. We can go in, we can change things around, we could add more photos, we can take stuff out. So in addition to your feedback on the actual plan, we're also looking for feedback on, you know, how does this space work for you upon your first impression of it as well. So yeah, take some time to explore. We've got our demographics. Again, it's, you know, persons with disabilities, low-income persons, people who are 65 years and older, what we call our transit-dependent populations. Yes, zero vehicle households. You know, you can just see the concentration of these different groups throughout the map. Veterans.
Justine, if I could jump in here really quick. Something that we tried to do with the story map is make it, I'm going to say, more reader friendly than a traditional plan that you might expect to see in PDF format. We're thinking that the audience, a lot of people might not really want to go through a report document kind of a thing, but they might be more interested in something with a little bit more compressed language and more, I'm going to say casual or, you know, plain English kind of language, less formal, less report-like. So let's look for that and see if you're comfortable with that tone. As you look at it, we're interested in that kind of feedback as well. Does it feel too casual, or should it be more formal? We're open to those ideas as you discuss this.
Great. So another section of our plan, of our story map, is kind of these activity generators, places that people are trying to get to and also get home from. So you can kind of see the concentration of areas. You can zoom in, you can click around. I would definitely encourage everyone to visit their region and make sure we've captured. If there's a place that you know has high traffic and it's not on here, like we want to know about it. So this is kind of, you know, a more personal touch. We obviously searched the area and identified major items that we thought were major, but we want to hear from you as well. And we scroll down, and now we kind of get to that mobility gap discussion that you guys have probably had quite a few times. Identifying the 2019 HSTP. We've got an overview of those by type. And we did change this. This is a header here that accidentally got put into a bullet, but it just hasn't updated on the site yet. Yeah, so we've got different types. We've got our accessibility barriers. We've got transportation services constraints, complex trip making. Those are kind of the main buckets that we're sorting your major barriers by. This kind of helps us guide towards the recommended strategies section of the plan. And then we've got our transportation resources. So we just wanted to present one place where someone could scroll through every type of provider that we identified in the region. Very brief overview of where they serve, who they serve, what times of day, and areas served. And then most of these have a live link to the website that directs someone out to learn more. So yeah, please review this, make sure everything, we've taken all of the revisions that we've received so far and integrated them, but could always use another set of eyes looking through. And then we get to our strategies, which will definitely look familiar for everyone. Let me summarize these. Is this where we would like to have that discussion, or do we want to get through the end and then circle back? What do you think, Sarah?
I think going ahead and we can like sort of preview these, and then we could go back, finish this up, and then I think get rid of that screen and it'll facilitate the discussion.
Great. So yeah, we have then, again, we have our 4 major categories of strategies that you guys have seen. We have the sub-bullets of types of projects that kind of fit under each of these categories. And then we have the end with some contact information. And that is the story map.
I'm going to jump in really quick here and point out these strategies are of everything in this plan is important, of course, but the strategies are really important because it's the strategies that are used to evaluate the consolidated grants proposals that some of you and others in the region will submit to WSDOT for funding. And it's important that those of you who are submitting proposals, that you find that there is at least one strategy on this list that lines up with your kind of a project, you know, what you're submitting. From what we've heard, I think we've got all the bases covered, but this is an important part of the public review right now among our providers, is to make sure that the kinds of project needs that you see important to your organization for meeting special mobility needs, that is reflected somewhere in those strategies. So there's a very direct link between these strategies and the projects that will get funded by WSDOT in the region.
Great. Did we also, I'm sorry, I was a little unclear. We want to continue through discussing the participation plan and then circle back to the strategies, or?
Actually, maybe it would be good to spend a little bit of time. Yeah, maybe Justine, I think it would be good to spend, I'm sorry, I was missing that connection is what you're referring to. So no. I think it might be good to take a little pause here and to make sure, you know, while it's fresh and, you know, people have just seen it, to think about those strategies. So, Michael, it looks like you've got some thoughts?
Yeah, well, just a quick question, actually, Justine. How do you want to get activity generator information for additional stuff that maybe should be on the map?
Oh, just an email to me, but perhaps I would encourage everyone to really maybe look at everything about the plan. So when you do send revisions, it's kind of a consolidated.
Okay.
So I'm not getting multiple emails from each person, but if obviously if something comes up and you didn't include it in your first, please just reach out.
Okay.
I would also, if you email it direct to Justine, I would also recommend that you copy Theron.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
And I saw that message from Nicole. So, you know, those are exactly the kinds of little feedback things that'll help make this plan more complete. Nobody knows this region and the services that are provided out there better than those of you doing it. So thank you for that. Do the strategies make sense to you all? That we in the 2019 plan, there were about 108 or 124 strategies. There was a lot. And some of them were very similar to other strategies. I mean, very, very similar, almost identical. And so we consolidated those. We tried to synthesize them down to sort of those core issues, and does that grouping of them, sort of strategies, the thinking is that some of those strategies are meant to sustain existing services, because you know those programs are out there now and they need to be sustained. Some of those strategies are meant to expand services or introduce new services that we don't have today. You know, so that concept right there, I think is you know, kind of important. This, you know, so do those types of groupings make sense to you all? Is that a logical way of thinking about it, the way we've grouped them? Amy.
Yeah, I like the way they're grouped, and I really appreciate how you know, there's the comments that are under each section in the written plan are broad enough that it will allow both the public transit agencies and the nonprofit providers that are part of this plan to be able to write a grant that will qualify and meet the needs that were identified during this planning process. So I like the way that they're grouped, and that they're not so specific that that it'll keep people from being able to apply for a project that's going to work well for the right size agency that they run.
Good, thank you. It's that I know that you all are flexing, adapting out there in real time, and we wanted to make sure that the plan did not box you in too tightly as you're trying to respond to real world conditions. That's good feedback. Thanks. Ed, did you have comments on it?
Justine, do you want to put your email in the chat so folks know?
Great suggestion. Well, if there are no other just questions or broad suggestions, we could maybe go ahead and talk about the public engagement process, and then that might also stimulate some more thinking about the strategies as you hear how we intend to engage the community. And just as a reminder, back in February, you all provided us direction for a lot of reasons. Our engagement is a virtual engagement process. We're not going to try to go do a meeting and expect everybody's going to come from all 4 counties to attend a meeting. We think we can do better outreach and actually engage the people we want to engage more effectively virtually. And so what Justine will present to you is sort of outline for that process. And just as a reminder, again, it's a virtual engagement process. So I think Justine, with that, I might turn that back over to you.
Great. I had a comment here from Beck just regarding the Slalom tribe. And in table 3, we'll notice that other tribes are discussed. However, the Slalom aren't included because no one physically lives on their lands, whereas the other tribes, they do. And it is a census table that represents that information based on census characteristics, and we'll make that more clear in the text. Because I could see how when you're looking at it, you're like, we're missing someone, but that is just a representation of data collected from those living physically on tribal lands. So we can make that differentiation in the text.
Thank you.
Great, so public participation. We are going to be making a much stronger effort to engage the public this round. It's something I am particularly passionate about and was not as included in the first round on. So we're going to go for it this time. We're going to reach out to all of you, other service providers, other social service providers, not necessarily transportation leaning providers, hopefully working with some email lists, some Facebook groups, getting the word out in various online media. We just want more people to know that y'all are working. You're working on trying to provide transportation to people. So with that, to support those efforts, we're going to be having an online community survey that presents an overview of what we've found, connecting people to the plan if they haven't seen it already. In an ideal world, they're coming to the website and seeing the plan, our survey, and our virtual workshop, which I'll get into in a moment. But in the off chance that they've stumbled upon the survey but not the plan, we'll have links from the survey sending them to the plan to be able to review it, as well as the virtual workshop. So online community survey hosted by SurveyMonkey. A virtual workshop is something that we came up with during COVID, as we primarily work with rural areas of the Western US. It's been very helpful in getting the word out to people who can't physically attend a Zoom meeting or in-person meetings. And so it's essentially a PowerPoint with a little pizzazz and a voiceover. So it's a PowerPoint. We usually have some sort of graphic movement, bullet point by bullet point will kind of come in, making it feel more like a movie. And then with yours truly as a voiceover presenting the information, and they can visit that at any time on their leisure. And then typically with that, we'll also have information linking out towards the survey and out towards the plan. So at any touch point where someone may stumble upon this participation, they're going to be connected to other portions of the participation, different ways for them to give us input. So does anyone have any other ideas or thoughts? If I'm missing something here, hey, you've got to get this to these people or those people, please put it in the chat and I will make note of that. We're just looking to reach as many people as possible this time.
Amy?
Yeah, I have a quick question about the community survey. So is that going to be a link for people to be able to add their comments to that and actually retake that survey? Are you taking additional comments in that same format, or is this a survey on reaction to the plan?
I think my interpretation of this survey is going to be very related to the current plan and their input to the strategies that we've identified in this, and then anything else that we've missed or needs that they might have that we didn't capture. Yeah, we are working on those questions now, getting those finalized.
And I will say a question popped up to me in the chat privately. We won't be using California pictures in ours. So, but that Justine had showed me how that works. And what's really nice about those is that it's, well, first of all, anybody can do it at their own leisure, at, 10:30 on a Friday night or during the workday on Tuesday or whatever, at their convenience. And it's short, it's a bite-sized chunk of information. It's not going to take a ton of time. And then it provides sort of a guide the kinds of questions that would be asked afterwards. So she's done them in other communities, and it looked like a tool that would work well for us. So for those of you who are like, wait a second, why are they putting California pictures on ours? That's why.
Oh no, that was just an
I know.
example. Another one that we've done. You know, you guys don't want the California State Capitol on your workshop. So yeah, I think that's it for our short presentation, and looking forward to just having you guys digest everything and just soak it in, and give us any other feedback you would like us to include in this next round of revisions.
I may have missed it, but how are we getting the information out that we're going to have this online PowerPoint that people can look at?
I'll jump in on that, Justine. We are going to work the same channels we worked earlier. So again, we're really counting on our service providers as far as getting out to, the great thing about our service providers is they work directly with those populations,
Right.
But we will also we will send it out through our own broad distribution list. So all of you will get notices of it that you can share. All of the people, all of our TAC members, all of our people on our just a broad information distribution list. And then we'll also use our regular media channels to get the word out. So we're trying to make it easy to share so, and I'm a bit of a dinosaur in that regard. We'll be also, I think, Justine, we're going to be using some Facebook posts, which I don't do anything with. So happily, we're working with some younger people who know how to work some of those social media channels for us as well. So we'll just cast as broad of a net as we can and make it easy to share that information.
Okay. Just want to make sure the public has every opportunity to review and comment.
That's right. And then we'll also post it prominently on our website. And today, if you go to our website, you all would know that you might find on the documents page, you'll see about a draft human services transportation plan. Click here, and it'll take you to a standalone web page that'll have the story map on it, the draft, the story map, the draft document, the engagement tools, all of that. Once we go live, we will put a link to it prominently on the homepage as well. But until we get your approval that this is ready to push out for public review, we haven't put anything like that up there. And
Okay. In the interest of time, if there's any more dialogue or conversation from the board members, we would definitely entertain that now. Are there any comments or concerns about the strategies, the story map, or the public participation at all? I'm not seeing any, and with that, we would entertain a motion to move the draft human services transportation plan out for public review and comment.
So moved.
Thank you, Michael. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the draft human services transportation plan being approved for public review and comment? Not seeing any. So with that, is there anyone who would be voting against the motion? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be voting against the motion to move the HSTP plan forward for review and comment? Hearing none, the plan can move forward with unanimous consent. Thank you, and I appreciate our consultants and all the work Sarah has done on this. I personally was very pleased with the story map and the simplicity of the actual plan. So yes, if we can all take a look at that, we will be asking for approval of the plan in October, and we will be provided with the public comments prior to that. So with that, we're going to move on down our agenda to the regional freight project priorities for FMCIB approval. Sarah, are you leading this discussion?
I am. And this came to you in June, to launch this. The Freight Mobility Strategic Investment Board has conducted a call for projects at the request of the legislature. They will present the legislature in December with a list of priority projects to be funded to receive $100 million in state freight funding. And they're conducting that call of projects through the RTPOs across the state. And so it was actually an extremely simple project request process. And we reached out to all of our members to see if they had any freight projects to move forward. As you see, we had 3 freight projects submitted. One is from Jefferson County, the Yar Bridge replacement. One is from the Jamestown Sklallam tribe to do some US 101 intersection upgrades between Knapp Road and Old Gardner Road. And the third project is from City of Port Angeles, reconfigure the interchange at the SR 117 truck route and the US 101 interchange and whatever improvements are needed upstream and downstream from there. So those are the 3 projects. What would happen if the board approves this is I will immediately after the meeting is over, they're keeping their process open through today for us. I will submit the projects from PRTPO to FMCIB. FMCIB will then begin to conduct their own internal review process. They have a wide range of freight project types that they are looking to fund. They will have their own internal review process. The folks who are submitting projects may be asked to provide some more information. And then in December, this list will go to the legislature. It could be advantageous for this region to make sure these projects are on the legislative priorities list later on the agenda, but that's for you to discuss later. Right now, what I'd be looking for is any questions that you might have about the projects, the process, and then ultimately a recommendation from you to the Freight Mobility Strategic Investment Board that these are priority regional projects to be funded.
So I'm clear, we have nothing to do with evaluating these, and we're not prioritizing them. We're just saying these are 3 projects in our region that the RTPO supports for moving forward. Okay, Ed, yeah, I see you have your hand raised.
Thanks, Chair. Not sure what the requirements are on this, Sarah, if they need to be in the RTIP or just simply in the STIP. Or
They don't need to be in either the RTIP or the STIP. So if they get funded, then yes, they would probably want to put them in the RTIP. But there's nothing on the I hate to even call it an application form, but there's nothing about being in the TIP to be.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for checking.
Is there any discussion on either the projects or the process, Lindsay?
Did I raise my hand?
You did.
The one that City of Port Angeles submitted is the intersection of Highway 101 and the truck route, which if people know in Port Angeles, it goes from the waterfront up to 101, kind of up Tumwater Creek corridor. And it was built so that log trucks could easily get down to the harbor coming from the west end of the peninsula. It does not include on and off ramps from the east direction or to the east direction. And so to be an effective freight bypass from downtown, it needs to have that other side of the on-off ramps built out. It's been in our capital facilities plan as an unfunded project for a number of years. And I think that's probably the reason, if I understand how our staff submit our capital facilities plans to the PRTPO process, if it's unfunded, we don't put it in, which I think is kind of a problem, because then when there's the opportunity to seize the day, we're not ready for that. But that's where that project's at. And effectively what it does is it allows us to get freight out of downtown Port Angeles, which, as people know if they've hung out, on the sidewalk in downtown Port Angeles, it's very loud and it's hard to make that space work for the multiple uses while we have just, I mean, like, yeah, log trucks rolling through downtown.
Thank you. I would say I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I always do, so that's okay. Monty, do you have anything you want to say about Jefferson County's, and Jamestown Squalum isn't here, so.
The bridge that was mentioned, the Yar Bridge, will likely end up with weight restrictions on it as we, redo the load ratings that we're in the process of right now. Center Road, it's on Center Road. It's a major freight corridor, so that's going to be a big impact freight on that road. So the project is simply to replace that bridge with one that doesn't have a load restriction on it.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion or information we need before voting on this? If not, we would entertain a motion to approve the regional freight project priorities for FIM submittal. Is there anyone who would care to make that motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to move that forward.
Thank you, Randy. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Oh, Ted has joined us.
That was a little late, but I'm here.
We've had people, Ms. Alyssa has joined us too. Anyway, thank you. We have a motion and a second on the floor to move the regional freight project priorities to FinCIB for submittal. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, is there anyone who would be voting against this motion? I will ask a second time, is there anyone who would be voting against this motion? The motion passes with unanimous consent. And now we will move on to our second star presentation today. And George, we're happy to welcome you. George is, and I'm not sure of your exact title, but George is the Olympic Region Planning Director. Is that correct?
Well, you can either go multimodal planning manager, or as
Okay.
Sarah said before, the new Dennis.
That's the
Yes.
easiest for most of us to remember. But every year DOT comes and gives us a review of the projects that they have for the Olympic region for the next year. And so we're real excited to have you here, George. And
Well, I'm excited to be here.
yeah, so
and
we'll
Becca,
go
I'd like
ahead.
to thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay. And thank you. Most people stumble over my last name. You just kind of like breezed right through it. So thank you for that. Thank you for having me here today. Just for background, I've been with DOT 4 years. I was previously in the North Central region, came over in mid-May when Dennis announced his retirement, and have filled in for him. We also, of course, I think many of you knew Teresa Turpin, who retired at the end of June. So Ashley Carl took over for Teresa. So both Ashley and myself are trying to learn the ropes throughout the Olympic region and spending time with PRTPO. I'm also trying to learn a little bit more about the region from a recreation standpoint. I love the outdoors. Had spent most of my time in the North Cascades and kind of in the Highway 2 corridor. Certainly in prior years, so now I'll have a little bit of a different focus in the Mount Rainier and the Olympic Peninsula area. So looking forward to that aspect of your area too. So I want to begin with, I guess I need to share, and hopefully this will come through. Do you see a nice big spreadsheet on your screen?
We do.
Okay, wonderful. I'll give you a quick overview of exactly what's being proposed here for washed out additions and changes to the RTIP. So I've grouped everything into 3 broad categories. I figured this was the easiest way to do it. So in total, over the 6-year cycle, adding $829 million in projects that you'll see there. Pretty even spread, about 180 to $200 million a year. More will be added over time as we move into future years. So of the 830 million, about 55% is in fish passage projects. About 15%, give or take, is what I call improvements, which are kind of the mobility projects. And then just about a third or under a third of the amount is in preservation projects. Let's see if I can move that guy there. In terms of the number of projects, there's 16 unique fish passage projects. However, there's about 50 individual fish passage sites that will be rectified as part of these 16 projects. So many of the individual projects have multiple sites. We bundle them together for construction purposes. There are 10 improvement projects and then 32 preservation projects. And what I'll point about particular preservation is those tend to get added in the early years of the STIP. And then, we come back in a year or two and you'll end up with a lot more preservation projects in 26, 27, and 28. So you'll see more added there. In terms of kind of what's being proposed, so within the preservation category, there's a couple of big ticket items in there that we'll go through. So the SR 109 Grass Creek Bridge replacement is just under $30 million, and that's slated for construction in 2025. And I'll highlight this if it will allow me to. So the preservation, and then there's a whole series of projects on the Hood Canal Bridge, which total about $200 million. So those 2 projects account for the lion's share of what you're seeing in the $280 million in preservation projects. We've stepped through the fish passage projects, 50 individual side corrections for the $445 million. And then in terms of the improvements, the $100 million, the big item there is the SR3 freight corridor, which is about 2/3 of that total. And also there's one other big ticket item, SR305 on Bainbridge Island, some safety improvements. So those 2 projects together are about 80 million of the $101 million. So this is typically what you see is in most cases, a couple of big ticket items, and then a lot more, $1 million to $3 or $5 million projects spread around. So before I jump to the map, I'll pause at this moment to see if anybody has any quick questions on the big picture overview.
Hey, George, Ted Jackson.
Hi, Ted.
Real briefly, tell me what the improvements to the Hood Canal Bridge will be for fish passage.
I don't know for fish passage. The money we have is for the Hood Canal is in the preservation program.
Okay.
And that is a number of deck modifications, some pontoon work, and various items like that. I'm not aware of anything within the STIP specifically slated for fish passage. But Ted, I can check on that and circle back with you.
No, you answered my question. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Appreciate it.
Okay, let me just jot that down. All right, now I'm going to try the big switch here. I have to say I'm a Teams person. That's what we use at WashDOT. So I'm going to try to switch from this screen to my over to the GIS. And can you see a nice map on the screen?
We do.
Awesome. Okay, that worked better than I thought. Okay, so the preservation category are the blue dots, the improvement are the green dots, and then fish passage is a nice little fishy. So we'll see that there. And I got to move this little screen here. So what I'll do is just kind of work around the region. I want to, we'll start with the improvement projects. And I will darken the other ones, remove those from the screen. So the improvement projects are largely in the eastern part of the RTPO. We have one project adding up in the East Squim corridor related to the Simdar Road interchange to do design and permitting activities in that area. And then the remainder of the projects are further to the southeast, Bainbridge Island and the Shelton area. I already discussed the SR3 freight corridor being the major item there. And the SR 305 further up here on Bainbridge Island. And then 7 other projects between Shelton and just north of Bremerton area. Switching over to the improvements, these I'm sorry, the preservation are a little bit further spread out around the region. So as I said, there were in preservation 32 different projects. With them, 9 of the projects are in the area of the Hood Canal Bridge. So there's 9 unique projects there, and those are all slated for construction between 2025 and 2027. A series of projects going on in that area. If we were to start at the kind of the southwestern corner of the region, so we have the region-wide assigning program. So this is showing up south of Aberdeen, but it goes throughout the region. And as needs arise, we have the projects. This is the SR 109 Grass Creek replacement, about a $12 million project scheduled for 2025. And we'd actually received some questions from some of the local council members in the last few days. So I think a response was provided on that one by some of the folks in the planning office.
Hey, George.
Yeah, Thera.
You could skip those and
Okay.
go on more towards, go up like towards Forks, go up further north.
Sure.
So George is just getting used to the region. And so that's actually just outside of our region where you were at. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
up in that area, I think we're back up in our region again.
Right. Okay.
But except for that one you said the sign that went for the whole Olympic region. So that one made so that you didn't have to worry too much about Aberdeen.
Yeah. Apologies about that.
Welcome
So in the Forks area, the SR 110, just a small bridge painting project. So a lot of these are going to be smaller projects here. I kind of already covered the bigger ticket projects. Again, bridge painting, deck rehabilitation all along 113, 112, and 101. And then emergency repairs on SR 112. This is obviously a continuing problem, and this particular project is to create a more permanent repair in the area. And then moving around through Port Angeles, way station preservation on 101. Moving further east, we already discussed all the Hood Canal projects. Moving south on 101, slope stabilization. And again, more bridge painting projects. This shows up as a fish barrier. I included this within the dollar amounts under fish passage removal, but it just shows up in 2 pieces here. And we discussed that one. And then on Highway 3, variable message sign system replacement. So I think you get the idea here. A couple of big ticket projects, a whole series of kind of smaller $500,000 bridge deck repairs, preservation projects, hardware upgrades, things like that. Tend not to bring a lot of excitement to the world, but very important preservation and maintenance activities to keep the system working. So the final block I'll step through are the fish passage projects.
George, could I ask a question real quick?
Absolutely.
This is Monty, Jefferson County, excuse me. I noticed some of the projects like the roundabout at 104 and Paradise Bay Road, 104-19, the Elwha Bridge, they weren't shown on the project list. Is that because they're, is this further out in the future, or how come those projects don't show up?
Yeah, this is all additions to the STIP. So those are projects already in the STIP, slated for construction sooner, and there's no changes to them. Gotcha. So we're only looking kind of at that increment. So if we were to be looking at everything in the STIP, including those that have gone to construction recently or coming to construction soon, it would be a much more expansive GIS map.
Okay.
So specifically the ones you mentioned, I actually checked earlier, and I know that Elwha River Bridge is due for add here in about 3 weeks.
Do you know about the Canal Bridge?
I'm sorry,
do you know when the roundabouts are scheduled for the Hood Canal Bridge?
You know, I thought I wrote that one down because I looked at that. I
have 24 in my head, but I don't know.
Yeah, and it might even be sooner than that.
Okay. I'm sorry, Beck, I stepped on your lap.
Yeah, no, because my question for George, you're going to get the fire hose now. But because I really appreciate all the information you're giving us. But I think what would be really helpful for our jurisdictions is to know what they need to plan for next year during your preservation or construction calendar for next year or in the near future. It's good to have the long range stuff. We need to know that, but I think also our jurisdictions just need to understand, and our transit agencies, where they may be expecting delays.
Beck, are you thinking like a work session maybe with the TAC?
Yes, something like that. Yeah. Because
state and the locals. Okay.
Those of us who drive that east side of 101, which I do with regularity, you know, I want to know when I'm going to be delayed on the Lilywop area. Okay. You know, and those sorts of things. And I think our jurisdictions need to, and they may already have this information, but that's what comes to my mind.
Right. And Sarah, I don't know if Steve covers this in his annual report. I know in North Central region, our regional administrator covered kind of the construction calendar in his work. Okay.
Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll circle back with you and Steve both, and let's talk about the best way to bring that level of detail to the board and to the TAC to make sure it gets to the right. So thank you.
The input I'm going to give here for the rest of the board is a lot of times our technical folks, our staff folks know about this. But I personally have gotten communications regarding some of the delays on the Olympic Peninsula this year. And as the policymakers, we may not have all of that. So it would be nice to have that in some form.
Right. And it's a different discussion, but a very important piece to certainly understand that.
Yeah.
So Theory, we can definitely bring that additional piece in.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, the final block are the fish passage projects. So as I said, 16 construction projects covering 50 different sites. Starting on SR 112 at the kind of the far north corner in the Whiskey Creek area. 2 sites around or I should say 2 projects around Port Angeles. And I keep saying Port Angeles, I'm sorry. Port Angeles. On Highway 101, and then moving further east, east of Squim, single barrier in the, I'm sorry, 2 barriers in the Blinn vicinity, and then 6 barriers further east on 101. So these are a 2026 construction year and a 2025. So we would expect that this is going to be a fairly active construction area for, in the 2025, 2026, 2027 range. So kind of advance, be prepared for that, just east of Squim. And then the remaining 11 construction projects further east, 2 on Highway 101, Marple Creek, 2 barriers removed there, and then 3 barriers removed further south in the Lillian Wap area. So all of those actually are going through pre-design right now. So the exact nature of them will be worked out here in the the coming 6 to 12 months on those.
George, could I confirm? I want to make sure I get it right.
Absolutely.
I think he said for fish passage projects, there were 16 projects, but about 50 locations that'll be
Correct.
Projects. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and that number can change because as we move through pre-design, sometimes the packages get reworked a little bit. But that's a ballpark number. And then the final 7 projects and sites kind of in the Highway 3 and 305 corridors, and then in the Gorst Bundle area also. So next year, actually, will be fairly active. I've been hoping to get this fine-tuned out of the map to show the 2023 additions. Wasn't able to do that, but there are some around Gorst, and then also further south on Highway 3. So that's another area between the fish passage removal and the freight corridor that's going to be very active over the next 5 years or so. So back getting to your question of where are the construction projects going to be and where they're going to be areas of concern, at the risk of being a little flippant here, it's going to be everywhere.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
And Gorst is going to be interesting. For those of, I live in Port Orchard, and for those of us, I can get on Highway 3 going south and miss Gorst, so I'm pleased about that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to use this opportunity to get you back on schedule. We were running a little bit late, I noticed. So again, very big picture. I think these come to you within the next few months. Our projects will be added into your RTIP. But wanted to give you a little bit of flavor for what's going to be there. It's a pretty sizable addition. Obviously, as we've been talking about for years in Washout, a lot of fish passage projects, over half the entire ad is in that area, but also a couple big regional priorities with the freight corridor and kind of beginning some of the important work, preservation work on the Hood Canal Bridge. So I wanted to use this opportunity to see if there were any particular questions, anything else I can answer.
Looks like you guys are going to be busy, and I sure do appreciate all that DOT does to keep our transportation moving.
Thank you very much. And there are, the other thing that'll be changing on some of these, possibly, I wouldn't be surprised in the, when we report next, that some of these dollar amounts change, because with complete streets, kind of the nature Currently, the thinking is that Complete Streets will be applying to fish passage projects, so there might be a change in the nature and the cost of some of these barrier removals. And it's going to start touching some of the other projects also. So don't be surprised if you see modifications to project costs in the future. And we might have a more expansive list where we have a lot more amendments to the STIF.
So if there are adjustments because of Complete Streets, each of those will come back through this process then, through a TIP amendment process?
If we're talking substantial price increases, then we will need an amendment on those.
And I see a question from Melissa in the chat asking who to contact about the northern of the two Gorst fish passage projects. Would that be you? Could she get in touch with you, George, or is there
Pass it on to me and I'll get it to the right person. There's a couple members of my team who are working specifically on that, depending on the nature of the question.
And we will follow up with you all as the board and then also with the TAC about sort of a construction as WashDOT gets a better handle on what that construction season schedule next year looks like. And we typically hear from the RA, the regional administrator, in February, so we can bring that to you. I don't know if that's too early, George, but maybe some insights at least about what my hunch is you probably know at that point, which would what your construction season is starting to look like. We could bring that to you, the board, in February, and then we could bring it to the TAC either in January or March, whichever makes sense from a WashDOT perspective, to make sure we've got that coordination at the staff level as well. I know it gets really complicated out there for your communities with so few alternate routes. And we do appreciate all the coordination between WashDOT and our local partners to minimize that disruption, or at least get as much done as possible when that disruption is happening, make it worthwhile.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, George.
Thank you, George. Appreciate your time and your presentation this morning.
Thank you.
It was good for all of us. And now we're on to our transportation outlook and our communication that we develop every year for our legislators. Our group has been meeting. We've met a couple of times and put a survey out since our last meeting in June. And Lindsay has been chairing that meeting for us. Lindsay, did you want to lead this discussion? That's a question. You can say no or you can say yes.
You can take it back.
Oh, okay. I usually yeah, okay. That's
okay,
just,
I will.
no. I'm happy to. Some of you are new to our executive board this year, and some haven't been actively engaged in necessarily this process before. But we typically, the RTPO puts out an educational piece to our legislators. And the last couple of years we've met, had Zoom meetings, we've done them a couple of different ways. And all of that is open for discussion today. The first thing the group did when we met was to talk about if this is a activity that we want to continue. Does it have value for us? Or is it something that has outlived its usefulness? So the particular people on the legislative work group, of course, we're all interested in it. And so we said, yeah, sure, we want to continue this. But the question goes out to the larger audience of our executive board. Is this an activity you want us to continue? And do you want us to continue to design a meeting with our legislators? If I could, solicit some discussion on that, some input, it would be appreciated. Or if some of the committee members want to speak as to why it was important to them that we continue.
Madam Chair, I'll jump in for a minute.
Thanks, Randy.
So one thing about the old expression, the definition of luck is preparation. things come up and we don't see them coming. If we don't have the opportunity, we're not already placing ourselves in front of them to take advantage of the opportunity, we will miss opportunities. So it makes no sense to we put a little work in and we're always out there in front of them and we get to know them and maybe create a relationship. That's not a bad thing. So I just see it as a little extra work, but I think it's a necessity.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would want to weigh in?
I'll add too that we think about this as a long-term process of building relationships with our lawmakers and also helping to make sure our lawmakers who are not otherwise familiar with the PRTPO look to the PRTPO as a resource for understanding what our transportation needs are going forward for the peninsula's region. So yeah, it's a combination of reaching for specific goals in the coming legislative session, but also building long-term objectives. We know we don't have a lot of staff capacity. We're not hiring a lobbyist for the PRTPO or anything like that. But we can be a resource for lawmakers who are trying to make decisions and they're like, okay, I'm going to call Thera because she's going to know the answer. And being in that position would be really beneficial for us as a whole community of governments and other organizations coming together in this way.
I guess I'm going to turn the question around. Is there anyone, if so, please raise your hand to let us know if you do not want us to move forward with the educational piece we do for the legislators. Okay, seeing none, we will move forward with putting together the piece. We put a survey out asking the importance of particular items to our to all of our membership, and you can see the results in the in your packet. The one thing that we came up with and that has been of significant importance to our group for the 8-9 years that I've been involved in this committee, and that is the possibility of swapping our federal transportation dollars with state money. Federal dollars, for those of you who are new to the process, are more expensive and administratively difficult to work with. They are more challenged, they're just more work. A lot of our projects are smaller dollar projects, and it is inefficient to use federal funds to complete those projects. It has been an issue. And what we have talked about this several times to our legislators. It was part of the discussion this year with the distribution of federal dollars. The Joint Transportation Commission had a committee that determined how the percentages and how some of this money would be distributed. One of the outcomes of that was the group was willing to do a pilot program to swap federal dollars for state dollars. And I'm not here to indicate this necessarily will be an easy pilot program or that in the end, it will be an easy solution, but there is a possibility that they will have a pilot program. And what we talked about at the legislative work group was having our 3 counties that are affected by that to raise their hands to be part of the pilot project. And I know that Steve Gray was going to do some research with Clallam County to see if they were interested. And I believe that Thera reached out to Jefferson and Mason counties also. So I would like to open that discussion. And do we want to make that our participation in that pilot project one of our major educational or elements of our education to the legislators? Steve, do you want to weigh in at all?
Sure. So Clallam County has been even before I started with the public works department, has been really interested in the federal SWAP program going many years back. And so we certainly would support the PRTPO supporting this for our legislative update and also working on the pilot program.
Jefferson County would share that sentiment as well. We've been working on this for years, and works great in Oregon and other states. So it could work great in Washington. We in Jefferson County, the county's allocation is in the $400,000 range every year. It's impossible to do a federal project for $400,000, and yet the expectation is that you spend about that much every year. And so it's a real challenge. And then on top of that, just all the federal requirements, Buy America Steel, 2 inches of forms you got to fill out every month, et cetera, to do a project like a sidewalk. So we would really like to see this federal fund exchange program move ahead.
Sarah?
If I could, I want to clarify and be really clear that we're talking about for the 3 rural counties, and just the Kitsap County members, your federal funds that you administer come through Puget Sound Regional Council, and this recommendation would not pertain to you all. We would, believe me, PRTPO does not want to stick its nose into how PSRC allocates their federal funding. So this is just for the 3 rural counties and their partners for whom they have a responsibility to administer these federal funds. And so just make sure there's no misunderstanding there.
Correct. So I'm not hearing any, again, negative conversation about this. So what I'm hearing is we can feel free to move forward with that as one of our significant elements of our piece this year. It will be educational to our legislators, but our ask to the legislators is, if necessary, can they support our 3 counties being part of the pilot project? And it would be nice if our whole region, we don't know how that's going to work out. Another item that we talked about at the legislative work group, because there was a lot of, when we did our survey, there was a lot of interest in a transportation package and revenue and all of that sort of stuff. Well, the legislator passed Moving Forward Washington, whatever that was that they did last year. And we don't anticipate another major transportation package this year. But one of the elements in Moving Forward Washington was the councilmatic opportunity for our jurisdictions to impose a 0.1% sales tax for their transportation benefit districts. And this is in addition to the 2% voter approved sales tax. And so I know some of our jurisdictions are already working on implementing the 0.1% sales tax to meet their transportation needs. That is a 10-year opportunity, and it can be reinforced in another 10 years. What that brought, and the conversation the legislative work group had on that, is we have many competing responsibilities for those sales tax dollars. That seems to be the revenue source that the legislature is giving us. I know mental health groups, SENCON groups, many of the other elements of our responsibilities also ask for a sales tax. So it seems like over time, we could easily be up to a 12% or a 15% sales tax, which probably makes most of our citizens a little twitchy. So the conversation we had would we like to suggest to the legislature, without any offering of a solution, that they think about other ways, other revenue sources that can be used for any or all of our needs, including transportation. And again, I just want to open this up to see if there's any interest in us providing that education to our legislators. I know, Lindsay, you had some thoughts on this at our work session, and so did Commissioner Taylor.
About the
Asking
revenue
them
piece?
to perhaps restructure the revenue sources somehow.
Yeah, I'll share kind of where I've been as a city council member who's, part of the PRTPO, part of the Straight Ecosystem Recovery Network, part of housing conversations and healthcare conversations and infrastructure other than transportation conversations in every place. Childcare, I mean, all these issues, we always come back to the same ask to the legislature, which is we need more funding for this particular issue. And I've realized, in my now 4.5 years as a city council member, that it's a little disingenuous for me to be like, hey, state legislature, we need more money for transportation. And then at the same time say, we need more money for all these other issues, while I recognize the state doesn't have an adequate funding supply. So that's why at the city of Port Angeles, we've been putting adequate state tax structure as one of our top legislative priorities, because that needs to be solved, because I don't want to basically take a bigger piece of pie for transportation when I'm taking that away from something like housing, right? At the same time, we look at how the state funds its revenue, and it's really regressive. It taxes the poorest people the most, and that's not fair at all. So that's why we've also said an adequate and non-regressive tax structure, because in the state of Washington, I think the stat now is that the richest 1% in the state pay about 3% of their income in state taxes, and the poorest 20% of the state pay about 17% of their income in taxes. So I think that we as an organization, should, not take a position on something like the wealth tax or capital gains tax or anything like that, but rather say, we understand that this is an issue and it needs to be addressed by the legislature, because I don't think we would say, well, I mean, here we are talking transportation, but we understand that we don't want transportation funding to take away from other critical need funding that the state has. And so unless the state has an adequate funding supply, that's really what we're asking for when we ask for more revenue for transportation. And, I can't, in good conscience, ask for more money for transportation when I know that that means I'm trying to take money away from something else that I'm also asking the state legislature to fund more. That's the irony of it.
Thank you. Dick, do you want to weigh in at all?
Commissioner Taylor, you're muted.
Wrong button. Okay. The state may want to, the state should look at different ways of earning or getting revenue. And of course, one of the ways of doing that is an income tax. And none of us, at least me, is in favor of an income tax at all. But that is a way of getting more revenue. But I am not in favor of that at all. We in ports, of course, our revenue stream doesn't depend upon sales tax. We're property tax and other means from our tenants. But so we need to look at it, but I don't think that we should be involved in trying to influence the state into changing the tax structure.
Are there any other comments about this subject?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Please, Randy.
I I mean no disrespect, but I want to point out that when you're on a football team, you do football. When you're, a car manufacturer, you sell cars. This is a transportation committee, and I think we need to focus on transportation and being able to get as many tools as we can for transportation, and as many ways as we can to get generated revenue for transportation. But we need to focus on transportation and leave the taxation structures and stuff to others unless it comes to us as a transportation package in this committee. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, I know it's not the intent of the RPTO to really get involved in anything that is political or controversial. So maybe the tax structure element, we just defer it to a later time. My concern was basically seeing our sales tax go up and up and up, and that's not sustainable either. Again, it was back to the question of sustainable, predictable funding. But again, I think rather than me just assuming from some of the conversation we'd had, if folks could just use their thumbs up or thumbs down button as to whether we should even mention tax structure in our legislative piece.
Beck, I'm not sure there's a thumbs down, so there's like
a
yes or a no.
Okay, I guess I expected more. Okay, then let's do the yes or no. And I can't say that I can even find the yes or no. Okay, there we go.
I can't find it.
Yeah. Oh, there's, if you see that there's a green check for yes and there's a red X for no. Do you see that, Dick?
It's under reactions, Dick,
Yeah.
at the bottom of your on your little toolbar. Take it out.
Okay. Steve, are you voting? You're a voting member today, I believe.
I'm gonna abstain since
Okay.
I'd have to talk to the commissioners on that.
Right. No, I understand that completely. Okay, so Monty, are you in the same position that Steve mentioned?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that all the people who have the right to vote are voting. Lindsay, you have your hand.
I'm just going to say, even though I'm pushing for this, I do think the legislative priority should be a consensus document from the PRTPO. So even if the majority said, thumbs up or yes, I would have hesitation about moving on this. I do want to just say that the way that we fund transportation is already political. That already in the campaigns we're seeing, people are pointing out gas tax, for example, as a political issue. So framing things as, well, this is political, this is apolitical, I think is the wrong framing. Okay. It's just, where is there a common sense around how we solve things? And, we all agree, like, we should have roads and they should, allow mobility and access. But, I think as an organization, we're not ready to go here, and that's totally fine. But the idea of everything we do being apolitical, I don't think is actually accurate, and it's already political. We're just not necessarily thinking of it that way, or for some reason, we're not seeing it even when it's in our faces.
Okay, I really appreciate your comments, particularly about the consensus, and because we did have several people who would prefer us not to move forward with that. So we will leave that structure piece out of our legislative portfolio this year.
Madam Chair, for future consideration on that, though, I do want to point out, I do agree with Lindsay that it is all political. There's no way around it that it's political.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is all political, and everything we do when it comes to that is political. My only aspect is if there's a project or if there's a taxation structure that's coming into being with that creates transportation that comes before us for our projects, then we decide that we want to support that type of thing based on the transportation. I just don't want to do it separate of all that.
Okay. I think we have a pretty clear picture of what we want to do. So what I'm going to, again, just put out for everyone to think about is we will make that federal swap and our counties participating in the pilot program as our primary focus. We will then also, should we say like a page 2 part of it, talk about the other things that are very important to us, such as the making sure our connecting Washington and our moving forward with the moving forward Washington projects, that our projects not get lost, and making sure that they get their complete funding. We will continue to talk about ferry service and vessel replacement, and staffing is particularly important to us. We will continue to talk about the importance of expanded EV readiness for our rural communities and the difficulty, I shouldn't say the difficulty, the different challenges that rural areas have to urban areas for charging stations. We will continue to talk about the resiliency of our transportation network, including things like, well, we know what happens to the macaws in 112 all the time, but also when there's a disruption on 101, when there's a problem with the Hood Canal Bridge getting on and off. And of course, Mr. Stern is not on our meeting today, but Mr. Bateman is here, and we will never forget broadband because Ed would never let us do that. So basically, with that said, and with the members of the committee that are on the call today or on the meeting today, we would make one the more active, and then our secondary kind of refresher education pieces. Thera, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm curious. So in the agenda packet, there was a hand down here. There was an attempt at writing up some language, some draft language. And last year, the board desired something that was sort of pointed and very direct, like, I want to make this big, bold statement, a big, bold statement, a big, bold statement. And we had very, very short turnaround time this year. I'm curious whether whether the board desires that same sort of very pointed, make a message, make a message, make a message, or what's in your agenda packet is less like that, just because it's a very first draft and need to know what our messages are even going to be before we make them pointed. So I'm curious if there's any feedback from you all as to how the tone, or this has traditionally been presented as like a cover letter with extra materials behind it. Does that still work for you? Or, the next time you see this will be in October. So, and then I need for you to approve it then. So knowing kind of what tone or how you want to convey your message to them would be helpful to us in making sure that what we bring to you in October, as much as possible, sticks the landing, if you would. So I'm kind of curious if you had a chance to take a look at that, that piece in the agenda packet. Does that style of writing seem appropriate, or would you like it to be a little bit more direct and telling them what to do? This is really just sort of says there's one thing we're really saying to them, and then everything else is, stepping back a little bit. So curious what feedback you might have on that, just to help us do it better on this next draft.
I think the tone looks great.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it looks very good there. I like it.
It's quite conversational.
And that's the question. Do you like?
Yeah, it's a conversational piece.
Well, if y'all have any thoughts, pass them on, because I will be working with the legislative work group between now and October to come up with an actual, this is just these are just words. They first cut of words. So what'll come back to you will look different and feel different based on the direction that you give to us. So if you have any thoughts on that, and also I'll just say we will be pulling together a project list in collaboration with the Technical Advisory Committee to bring back to you, and then some infographic update piece as well.
Again, is there anything else that we talked about at that work group that we need to bring forward this afternoon or this morning? Yeah, we did not have, we got real excited about the pilot program and of the swap. And I think that's where we focused most of our conversation. We also talked about tax structure as we did today. We all felt the need to keep our secondary issues in the forefront to let our legislators know those continue to be important to us. The other thing we talked about was doing a format similar to what we did last year, and that is have one meeting with all of the legislative districts invited to it. And we focus on a time that is convenient for the members who are on the Transportation Committee. And of course, we have an election between now and then, but Michael Chapman and Dan Griffey and Emily Randall. Griffey and Chapman sit on the House Transportation Committee, and Emily sits on the Senate Transportation Committee. So we work with their schedules, have all three legislators together and have just one meeting. The year before, we had separate meetings for each of the legislative districts. But with your permission, doing the one meeting and having both House and Senate at the same meeting seemed to be fairly fruitful for us. And again, we would want that scheduled soon after the election, but not prior to the election, because legislators can change because we do vote. So, is there any, Lindsay, you've been facilitating those meetings. Is there anything else we should talk about?
I think that's it, but I'll kind of defer to Sarah too, if
Okay.
you've got other thoughts on it. The other thing to say is that that is not a closed group. Anyone here who is hearing about this for the first time is like, wait, I want to be part of that, can absolutely be part of that group in finalizing these documents and putting together these plans to meet with the legislators in our region.
Okay, with that, going down the agenda, Sarah, do you want to give us a coordinator's report?
Sure. In light of the time, I'm not, I'll just say you've got so much coming at you. I'm sorry, I sent this coordinator's report out last night. I will get it posted online as well. There is just a lot going on. There are so many funding programs coming down at you all. And so I tried to highlight the ones that would have the greatest relevance to our members. In particular, there are funding programs coming down where there's a actual like a bonus, an incentive for tribes to participate. And so that very first funding opportunity, please, our tribal members, I will be following up with you separately. There's a lot of money out there for replacing old diesel equipment, including marine vessels that requires 0% match. There's some other electrification of transportation system grants. There's another one out on the streets right now that if you have never received a grant from Commerce for this, and in particular, they're looking for tribes, ports, and small PUDs, you get like an extra 20 points bonus on your score if you've never received a grant from them before. I tried to highlight, the funding programs that seem most relevant. I am getting inquiries from members about some of the big federal funding programs, the federal competitive. I think of all of them that I'm seeing right now, the Safe Streets for All might have the greatest potential, both in terms of the pot of money as well as the complexity of the application process. For those of you who might be looking at the Reconnecting Communities grant program, it sounds really good on paper. It includes like a benefit cost analysis that just the instructions for it is a 55-page instruction manual. So, and given how much money is available, they might fund 12 to 20 projects across the nation. If you were asking me for advice, I'd say there's probably better places to direct your very limited staff resources. If, please, because I sent this out separately, it's always meant to, as a part of the agenda packet, it's always meant to be shareable. But now, because I've got it out so late to you all, it's very easy to share. Please feel free to route it to your staff or colleagues who might be looking at funding, things coming up. There are also some other things that I wanted to highlight in there for you. For our local partners, cities and counties, WashDOT has to start reporting to Federal Highway Administration on locally expended revenues on the National Highway System. So the National Highway System, most of it is state routes, but some of you have local routes that might also be designated as National Highway System. Just wanted to give you a heads up that WashDOT will be approaching you shortly to ask you to start providing input to them on the revenues that you spend. They have to report this to Federal Highway Administration. So just a heads up that that's coming. There's information in there on the potential federal funding swap. I want to point out on the EV infrastructure side of things, you all gave me some budget to help increase the EV readiness of the region in support of our long-range regional plan. And so for about a year, we maintain a little section on our website with EV resources, electric vehicle resources. We've convened like 3 or 4 now stakeholder opportunities that brings in a wide range of participants, more than just our members who are working to install electric vehicle infrastructure or looking to change their city, their municipal fleets to electric vehicle fleets. There is, hopefully we'll have time on the agenda in October for this and have better information, but there's a new program going into effect January 1 that will affect all of you, or potentially affect all of you, working to increase your electric vehicle infrastructure, and that's called the Clean Fuel Standards. It's in rulemaking right now. There's information on that in the coordinator's report. Any of this stuff is deep and complex. Please get in touch with me. My contact information is on there. I have a lot more information than I could provide in this report for you, and I've never put together a coordinator's report that is so long. So it's so as long as it is, I have scads more information. So please, if any of this looks of interest to you, or you've got follow-up questions, or you want to be kept in the loop going forwards, because this stuff is happening faster than you all meet. And so if there are things that you or your staff need to know about as it's progressing, if I know that, I will keep you in that loop. I'm monitoring as much as I can, within the budget that we have. And, but it's exciting. There are tremendous opportunities on a lot of different fronts if we can grab this tiger by the tail. And it's a hard one to get a hold of right now with everybody's resources stretched so thin. But so hopefully this helps you and your staff sort through everything and figure out what's the best value for your limited time and resources, and let me know how I can help. And in light of the time, I don't want to go on too long back, but
okay, thank you. It is, and we know there's a lot of funding out there, and we know that we have human resources limitations at this point. So we congratulate everyone for doing the best they can. And we will now open it up for public comment. Is there anyone in our audience that wanted to provide public comment today? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone in our audience that wanted to provide public comment today? Seeing none, we will go down to any updates our members want to give us, any for the good of the order that anyone wants to share. Michael, you look like you want to say something.
Well, I guess if nobody's going to say anything, I should say something. I would like to report that we're moving along very nicely with our Connecting Washington partially funded roundabout and corridor project. It's coming along very nicely. We're only a few months away from finishing up and the roundabout on 305 and our new big corridor that is a big deal for us. There's a for a small municipality, a $20+ million project is a pretty big deal. And it's been a very interesting project in collaboration with WashDOT and working on their right of way in addition to creating our own new roadways. It's a really cool project, and we're very much looking forward to having a little grand opening and being able to show off the results of a lot of hard work from everyone, including the first pedestrian tunnel on SR 305. We're very excited about the results of that. So
congratulations on getting that to completion.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool. And then I was just gonna say, as Sarah's talking about all the upcoming, oh my gosh, fire hose of funding, I think it's really cool that the legislature, both local and nationwide and national, has been throwing a bunch of money at us. But as in corollary to the predictability of funding, I think predictable funding with a lot of notification that, hey, this is going to be coming down the pike in 3 or 4 years, so that we can set the pieces up to be able to take advantage of it, would be even more important than just a big chunk. Because the big chunks that come at you rapidly are very hard to adapt to. We don't ramp our staffing levels up and down, by the year. So part of predictability is going to be, more notification of these funding levels. I think would be something that would really be super helpful, more so than just a massive chunk. Here you go after it. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Appreciate that. Is there anything else anyone would like to share for the good of the order? Seeing none, I want to thank George for being with us today. Appreciated his presentation. Appreciate all of your input on our human services plan and allowing us to move that forward. And also your input and discussion on our legislative folio that we'll be putting together. Amy, I see that you put your video on. Did you have something to share? No? Okay. Thank you. Let me read the last thing in my chat. Thank you. Okay, with that, we will stand adjourned and we will see you in October. And a reminder, in October, we will be approving or not our human services transportation plan and beginning the consolidated grant funding process. And we will be approving or not our legislative folio and having information on that meeting. I'm not sure what else is out there for those, but for that meeting, but I know those are our real 2 big items that will require action. So with that, we stand adjourned. Thank you.